But in offline politics, something happened recently that is usually it's very uncommon. It's almost unheard of in the United States. Is there was an assassination attempt on a political official, a QAnon. I don't even know if he was a QAnoner, but general right wing crazy person. Went to Nancy Pelosi's home in California, in LA, and tried to assassinate her. However, she was not there because she was in DC for, Congress and Congress-related things. So yeah, this crazy right-wing guy, who, by the way, is also a Nazi. I don't know if I mentioned that. Believes in, like, the globalism, Jewish control conspiracy theories and whatnot. Tried to assassinate Nancy Pelosi at her home in Los Angeles, but she was not there, so he attacked her 82-year-old husband with a hammer. Luckily, he is fine. I mean, I say fine relatively, he's recovering. He'll be alright. Ordinarily, this would not be noteworthy to me. This is just, this is the logical conclusion of the right wing. However, at an institutional level, the sort of acceleration of the right wing towards this logical conclusion is happening quite a bit quicker than I would have expected it to. Governor Youngkin, the governor in my state, gave a speech, and he said, oh, we disavow violence, but, and he added this caveat, but let's send home Nancy Pelosi so she can grieve in person, or whatever. So this is him saying, as an elected official, it looks bad for me to endorse violence. However, I do endorse this violence. I'm just going to say it so that I don't look bad. So the mainstream Republican Party is now in the position of actively, although still tacitly, endorsing violence against their political opponents by doing one of two things. Either saying, like, some sort of got 'em liberal shit, or just saying, that's what you get. Making no effort to stop it. Fox News as well has been on this, on that same gravy train, more or less, of tacitly endorsing this would-be assassin by saying, oh, well, this is why the Democrats shouldn't be defunding the police. Something that they're not doing and have never done, and unfortunately will never do, probably. So, in accordance with the phrase "desperate times call for desperate measures," we are now firmly planted within the desperate times. And I feel it apt, actually, to bring up a quote, unfortunately by Hitler, but it was about his own movement, where he says that the only way to have defeated the Nazis was to stamp them out in their infancy with overwhelming force. So if the Social Democratic government in Germany had done anti-fascist raids, had banned the Nazi Party from holding office, all that sort of thing, then the Nazis would have been defeated, and they never would have come to power, by Hitler's own admission. Basically him saying that the only way that they succeeded was because the Social Democratic and liberal government didn't do anything to stop them. And here in the United States, we're actually now faced with a very similar situation, where Republicans openly call for violence, Republican elected officials. It is the party line that violence against Democrats is acceptable and justified, and that any election that they do not win is to be viewed as fraudulent. So they do not believe in free and fair elections. They are effectively the American Nazi Party, in as many, like, allegories and parallels as you can draw, just about. So, in accordance with that admission from Hitler back in the 1930s, I believe, that they could have been stopped with overwhelming force in their infancy, I can think of no more appropriate action than for Joe Biden to try to get the Justice Department to open up mass investigations, pursue mass arrests of Republican politicians who endorse these kinds of politics, and to effectively ban the GOP from holding office. That's what we have to do if we don't want America to become Nazi Germany 2 Electric Boogaloo. Sorry, that was a very, very bold-chested explanation of party politics in America. But yes, basically, if the United States as a democracy is to survive, the GOP has to be banned from holding office. We are actually, I believe that we're actually beyond the stage in which you could calm things down sufficiently with a purge of fascist, like, Republican officials. I don't think that's going to work anymore. I think at this point it genuinely would take just banning the party outright. And to people who would criticize me by saying that would make America a one-party state, tough shit. Maybe don't have a party that's, like, dedicated to gassing the transes next time. You know? Then we won't have to ban your party. Oy, oy, oy. Very unenviable position to be in. But also, I think the sort of immediate mental default to, oh, that would make America a one-party state is indicative of an implicit acceptance of the two-party system. Like what? You're saying that there's no other way that it can be other than we have a Nazi party and a party that's not the Nazi party? Like, no. We can have more parties than that. Other countries do this all the fucking time. In fact, Ukraine, at the onset of the invasion by Russia, actually banned pro-Russian political parties because that would be, you know, an act of treason, sympathizing and collaborating with an invading enemy. And they still had a pretty wide ideological breadth of representation in Ukraine, even without those two parties. You know, right-wing parties do not have to be limited to fascist parties. There's more ways to express right-wing, slip of the tongue there, Freudian slip, right-wing politics. But to go back to fascism in America, politics in America, I know things seem bleak, and that's because they are. However, lest you be tricked into the doomer mindset, you guys need to remember this one thing. Voting works. I know, you know, electoralism, granted, on its own is an insufficient tool to meet, like, certain ends. Like, I'm a socialist, so I advocate for direct action and stuff. You know, participation outside of electoralism, which I myself am not very good at engaging in, but, you know, maybe, hopefully one of these days I'll get into a good routine where I can actually do some of that. But voting does help a lot. And the biggest argument for this is that if voting is so useless, why are Republicans so damn interested in stopping you from doing it? The Republican Party, before its, you know, turn into full-blown fascism, practically defined itself by its opposition to widespread voting. The message ever since the 1960s has been very clear. When more people vote, the Republicans lose. You know, that's why they had that whole screed against early voting in 2020 as well. I remember that one. Because voting works, and voting tends to, you know, when people vote in larger numbers, they tend to lose. Which means that they don't get to further hand America over to giant corporations. You know, I would like to address something as well that I talked about in a stream a while back, and that is the mentality of vote blue no matter who. I will maintain that this should not ever be applied to primary elections. You should vote in any primary election to get the most, like the leftmost candidate that's possible if you're voting in the Democratic primary, to get the candidate that's like the most staunch on representing the electorate and not like big giant corporations or whatever, somebody who's not just going to be, oh, just another Democrat. But when the general election comes around, unless it's in the very rare case that I think California does, where they have like a top 2 vote getter system, in which case sometimes you can have 2 Democrats. If it's Democrat versus Republican, vote blue no matter who, unironically. Because even the most corrupt, slimy, you know, this is something I even, you know, some people might disagree with me on this who are on the left. Even the most corrupt, slimy, weird, like, out-of-touch neolib is preferable to a fascist if you have that choice. And with Republicans, you will be forced to make that choice every time that there's an election. So yeah, vote blue no matter who, unfortunately. As much as I hate it when the Democratic establishment is right, those words are correct. Now what they're using them for is stupid, because they only you'll notice they only say vote blue no matter who in the primaries when they say this guy is who you should vote for. But in the general election that holds. God damn it. And at the end of all this, remember to go and vote wherever you live. Vote in your election. Vote in every fucking election that you're allowed to vote in, because the fate of democracy literally depends on it. In Europe, this threat might not be as immediately felt, but in the United States, we're basically hanging by a thread. If Republicans win this election, or gain a certain number of seats in Congress, especially if they win state elections and local elections, a lot of those positions are state secretaries of state. And those people are charged with running the state's elections. If a Republican wins the position of Secretary of State, you can kiss free and fair elections bye-bye. You will never see another free and fair election in a state that re-elects or elects a Republican Secretary of State. And you can quote me on that as well. I'm willing to like bite the bullet on that if I'm wrong, because I hope I'm wrong. God, it like 2016-17 compared to now seems downright stable. You know, like, you know, these today. Imagine having to deal with as political entryism that we're like literally watching the death of democracy in this country. Like, oh great, this is the mess I walked into. So I think with how doom-inspiring modern politics in America are, you know, I think it's necessary as a point of political entryism for me to emphasize that, you know, the battle isn't even lost, and the war is never lost, right?